Davide speaking on behalf of NASA and saying that they were rather disappointed with the fact that they did not meet, but also a list of demands came out of what they need to be done before we go to the elections.
All right, and even in that exclusive interview with Yvonne Okora last night, Raila Odinga reiterating they will, and in fact he did say that they didn't say they will boycott the polls, they just said they will not go to the polls without their conditions being met. I don't know what difference is there. But taking a look at the conditions that they've set out, among them is the resignation of Ezra Chiloba. He wants about 11 poll agency officials excluded from the next election, an overhaul of the ICT infrastructure. Is this attainable in just 33 days?
Based on what the Commission thinks, they've been having meetings, they've been working on this project team, because this is not the first time that NASA is raising these issues. Remember last year when we had at the height of the anti-IBC demos, there were names that were actually floated during the select committee sittings. I remember the one that brought MPs from both Jubilee and the then CORD coalition. And if you talk to some of the members who were in that committee, they tell you the same names, some of the same names they're pushing out were actually mentioned during that probe. And what they say that because they were already changing the entire commission, those are the commissioners, it was not going to be prudent to also go for the secretariat. So one of in the report that they actually came out with from Windsor, there was a requirement that the chairman do crack a whip on the secretariat. And this didn't happen. The same names again have actually featured again after the elections were nullified. So I think from where NASA sits, they believe that if actually these people were maybe set aside, then things will have actually been different. Because this is the first time we're finding ourselves going back to the elections. Nobody envisaged this. People thought once we have an election, it was only going to be a rerun that was going to take people back to the polls. Now, even before that, when we approached the electoral agency, they said that they had a budget of 500 million for a rerun. Now we are hearing them talking about 12 billion. So what has actually happened, because they're saying they're retaining Al Ghurair, they have a contract live for 2 years. So if they have a contract, why is it that this figure is going up as opposed to going down?
Also quite a number of things there. And well, the question, of course, that also Kenyans will need to ask themselves is if the opposition says and makes good their threat that they will not attend or go to the polls, what impact does that have? Because from the Jubilee side of things, the way they're looking at it is you're not forced by the Constitution to come for the polls. So if you don't come, it's more like a walkover.
I don't think from where they sit, I'm not a lawyer, but from where they sit as a journalist, I think maybe they're misadvised. Because remember, NASA petitioned the president-elect's win. So in this case, they cannot say that we'll go to the polls without him, because actually he was a petitioner. So if they have to follow the Supreme Court ruling to the letter, then the two candidates must go,
participate.
Yes, must participate.
But the difference here would be one of the candidates has refused to participate, of course, given some of the conditions that he has given. But it's not that the reason for him not participating is he has refused to participate.
But remember, this is a country where we are, all of us, and we are governed by a constitution. When the Supreme Court said that the IBC either neglected or ignored to do its work, surely these are two players coming in who had fair, verifiable elections. There's no way I can go to a game where I think the referee is biased or I believe the referee will not do what is required of them to do. And even if you look at NASA's arguments, they're based on a memo that actually the chairman himself has owned up and said those are the issues they had within the commission. And you remember even when he had the press conference in Naivasha, he said they've received the responses, the commissioners are going through the responses, and they will respond back. And if you look at the 12 points that he actually raised, there are some of the issues that were actually canvassed at the Supreme Court. For example, the marks, the unique features that were supposed to be in the ballot papers. Even in terms of transmission of results, it is something that is in law that actually the MPs passed through the amendments last year, that these results were supposed to be in a public portal. They uploaded the agreed forms. which when we went to the polls, we did not see forms. What we saw were results, only for forms to come in later after the declaration of the winner.
But then let's just focus a little bit on why NASA may feel like the referee is biased. Because, again, basing from that memo that was written, or that letter, rather, by Wafula Chebukati and the 12 points that he had given out. And then later on, we see a retreat in Naivasha, the IEBC commissioners coming out a day later and saying, we have sorted our internal wrangles. We promise to be a united front as we head towards this election. But Raila Odinga, in that exclusive interview with Yvonne Okwara last night, saying it is obvious that IEBC has a lot of external pressure from the Jubilee side. How then can we begin getting this in order? And do you believe that IEBC, you know, with the commissioners just meeting in that retreat, have really ironed out all the internal wrangles?
I don't know if they've exhausted all the internal wrangles, but I'm one of the journalists who have been on the IEBC bit, and there have been so many contradicting statements flying out from the CEO to the chairman, to the commissioners, and then all of a sudden here they come and they say, now we are ready to forge ahead. But if you look at the roles of the chairman, as substantive chairman, you cannot say that you can give a direction and your direction is overruled by your commissioners. We saw the DP actually insisting that the chairman must assert his authority and at the same time telling the chairman that you must take everything to the plenary. Now, if you saw like the memo, the chairman wrote it in his capacity as a chair. When he named the new project, the 7 members, he said, as the national returning officer. So you look at it and you see like there is a disconnect between the commissioners themselves and the CEO. Now, in this case, we are seeing them coming out and saying, we are working together. But here is NASA raising some pertinent issues that they're actually not ready to listen to. So in this case, we are seeing either one side is disadvantaged against the other.
And of course, there's also the question that Raila has raised, and this is to do with the memo. And one of the demands, he says, since the memo leaked, of course, that was unfortunate on IEBC side that it leaked, but now that it has leaked, can the CEO then tell us what are the answers? Has he got the answers to the memo? Because remember, they're part of also what was raised during the petition as by NASA as part of the reasons why they were discontent with the results. So the question here being, are they going to, despite them saying they have a united front, are they going to give us answers to what the chairman raised to the commission?
Right, and it's also obvious from that same memo that there is criminal culpability within the commission. The chairman pointing a lot of fingers to the IEBC CEO, Ezra Chiloba, and one of the demands by NASA is that they want prosecutions done before this repeat election. Is this likely to happen? Because a Pandora's box has already been opened and now they're trying to close it, but it's all out in the open.
I don't know if they'll manage within the time limits we have, but remember the memo that was sent to the CEO. It was actually for him to explain, and he was very categorical on the issues that he had actually identified. And when the chairman spoke in Naivasha, he was talking about, we have received the responses, we are going through them. But here is a chairman who says, we are one and we are forging ahead. Now, this is an institution that the Supreme Court has indicted based on the way it handled the elections. Now, when you come to a whole nation and assume like everything is okay, and we need to forge ahead without holding some people to account, then you tell us that actually you're part and parcel of what actually happened.